Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be episode 34, and this is going to be the first episode where we are going to actually start making final backgrounds for the animation. And we're going to pretty much use everything we have done already in the previous episodes, and just kind of compile them and just kind of make our final background that is going to be used for the actual animation. Now this is going to be the first one, and the reason I wanted to start with this one is because it's sort of a establishing shot that kind of shows the entirety of the space that the next couple of scenes are going to be taking place at. And also this was kind of like the sort of like the coolest background that is probably going to be out of these beginning scenes. And so I wanted to start with this one just to kind of have some momentum with the other pieces as well. And it kind of helps me get more excited about the other ones when I get to do like one that is like establishing shot like this. And so here I'm just showing you the final product. And before I start with the Photoshop process, I do want to show you, like I mentioned on the previous episode, is to show you the actual 3D model. And I mentioned before that pretty much everything here is 3D in terms of like the surfaces. And so I feel like that way, first of all, it will be more consistent throughout the different shots, but also it would just be a lot easier to do the Photoshop work, and it saves a lot of time in the long run, especially when you have to do multiple shots in the same location. It just helps the entirety of the process. And this is something that I normally use in the studio as much as I can, and you can tell the difference, with the end product, as we have to do multiple backgrounds. So let's take a look at the 3D model. And the first thing that I do is just saving my camera for the different shots that we're gonna be in this space. So I have one camera, it's pretty simple, and I have on each frame I have the shots that I'm gonna be doing. So that way I don't lose that camera angle. And I set this very early in the process, so that way I set it up and I don't have to worry about it anymore. But I'm just gonna fly around here so you can see what I have. And pretty much I worry mostly about what I'm gonna see in the frame. So you can see this frame here around this gray frame, and everything in there outside of that, I'm not really that much worried about it. Um, Maybe some little things that will help with the lighting, like cast shadows and some stuff like that. But overall, I'm mainly concerned about what's happening in the frame. And most of, I think, these three frames happened within this, so it was pretty simple to set up. Now I'm gonna fly around so you can actually see it from the outside. You're gonna see here this huge cube here, and this cube, even though we don't see it, this is what I use, and I use this a lot. This is what I use to cast shadows. So this big cast shadow that I have here on the foreground on the left side is caused by that cube, because my lighting is coming from the right top right, and so I have that cube to cast a shadow on purpose, so I can concentrate my focal point in this area where most of my contrast is gonna be. So I wanted to have this really orange light and these really cool shadows. And so I didn't want it to be this orange light like everywhere. And so with that cube, and sometimes I gotta use multiple objects, I can control where the light hits and where the shape of my shadows and all of that thing. So that's what this big cube is for, right? And outside here, you can see that I build up, as you saw in the previous episode, I build up just a few assets that I knew I was gonna reuse all throughout the different locations. And so I have this thing that I knew that this was gonna be prominent in most of my shots. And just other things, railings, and some sign panels and wall panels and all this sort of stuff. I just wanna kind of run you through some of this, some AC units. I have some garage doors and cables and some techie components and boxes. Some tiling here. I have more tubes and cables. And I use all these just kind of like assets where I can duplicate and edit and just kind of move around to kind of play around with my scene. I also did here on this side. And this is thinking about the other location. I did here some flooring, different flooring that I can duplicate. My stairs and some of the flooring on these first shots. And something very simple, you know. This is kind of like, I'm a strong believer in like doing a really good prep work, because I think it will save you a lot of time in the long run. And so this process could be a little bit tedious because you gotta make things, put them on the side, get creative things. But um, later on, when you start putting them all together, you'll see the advantage of having all these assets to your disposal to kind of build your scene and that sort of thing. And I will still create new ones, unique ones for specific locations, like the walls here and the ceiling and the light pole and all that stuff. But it's very minor. Um, but as you can see, a lot of this stuff that you see here are from my little library that I have here on this side here. All right, and so yeah, so that's pretty much it. I started building this image. I mean this model, looking from here, from this shot, and little by little I just kept adding and adding and adding, just kind of keep tweaking with my placement and things that I wanted to have in the scene. And after that, I just began lighting it, putting the lighting. The lighting was going to be crucial for these pieces, and so I spent a little bit of time working on that, just to make sure that I get the idea that I had in my mind. Now, I'm not really worried about all the decals and the signs and the letters and all that, because I was going to do that in Photoshop. So that was something that I didn't have to worry about. But the rest of the stuff, I really wanted to have a 3D base for it. All right. So so that's my scene. And for the next 3 episodes, this one and 2 more, I won't be showing you because I'll be using the same exact model, like for this shot, which is today's episode. Then next week's episode is going to be this other shot, and then the third shot here. It's pretty much the same model, same lighting, same render passes, and pretty much the same. So as you can see, as you move forward, if I were to do 5 more backgrounds here, I just have to set up the camera, press render. I already have the lighting, I already have the render passes, some of the textures, and the only thing I have to do is just the Photoshop work, the decals, the effects, and that sort of thing in Photoshop. Well, pretty much it's set up. And the cool thing here is, like, if I were to do a can you storyboard, or we need new shots, let's say I wanted to do a shot like this, where it's looking a little bit, we have the railing on the foreground here, maybe the character is walking from left to right here, or it's coming from right to left here, a lot of people or something. I can just set this camera, render it, and just paint it, and it won't take me a lot of time at all, just a few hours of work after the render. So I think it's pretty powerful to have that in your disposal. But anyway, so that's the 3D model. Now, before I show you the time lapse of the actual painting, let's go to Photoshop here, and this, what you see here now, is the actual 3D render, like the raw render. And as you can see, there's a lot of information here that if you see the final product, there's a lot of information from the render that translates into the final background. And I think that's great because it saves a lot of time in the long term, in the long run. So what I want to do is I want to show you some of the render passes and how I use them, because I think that's also very important. And again, I won't be doing this for for the rest of the episodes, because it's pretty much the same process all over again, just with a different background. So I want to take my time on this one, which is the first one, and just kind of show you how I use this render passes and what are the benefits on how I use them and stuff. All right, so this is pretty much the regular beauty render, which is pretty much all the passes in one, and I have some raw shadow. I'll talk about that one later. This is a raw light, And this is my render ID, which I sometimes use, I sometimes don't, and my world normals. And this is probably my favorite one, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And also I have a CDEP pass. Now this one was very important to get, or to help me get the look that I wanted. As you notice here, when I render these scenes, I use a toon shader in V-Ray, and it gives this outline, sort of like a drawing outline onto my objects. And I actually apply this on top of the painting because it gives you like a anime-ish type of look, like if it was drawn, like the outlines when you draw characters. So I think this part here, or this type of render with these lines, was pretty crucial to kind of get that look. So I'm gonna keep that on the side. Now, my rose shadow was very important because I wanted to have the very contrast between my very orangey warm light and my really cool shadows. So when I have a rose shadow, I can color that with the blue or whatever color you want, and apply that into your regular render. Let's say you want to do maybe a screen, right? And you can see that it applies kind of like that cool color onto my shadows. And the same thing I can do with my row light. So I have my row light here. Actually gonna duplicate that, and I could put that in color dodge. And now you're gonna see that I'm blowing up that section of light that is on my render. You can already see, and I can always play with this. If I don't want it to blow out, I'll make it a little bit slightly darker, so it's a little bit more saturated. Right? And I can also duplicate that and do a little motion blur, just very slightly. And let's put that on screen. Let's darken a little bit the row light. And what this does is that it will give me, lower the opacity there. It will give me some sort of like a bloom effect, or the starting of a bloom effect into my light area. That's something that I wanted to have, just this kind of bloom effect into where the orange is. So for me, I can start building up. Now, right now, my shadows I think are too light. So I will, of course, as I work the piece, I'll work that out and have a good contrast between my shadow and light. But row light and row shadow are very useful to kind of play with the colors and the temperature of your lighting and your shadows. Now, render ID, I sometimes use it to select objects, but the problem that I have with render ID, and this is something that I don't know how to figure out actually, that I get this very alias effect on the border and on the edges. And so when I make selections, it looks like that, and I really don't like it. It's not very clean, and so I try to avoid it as much as I can. But if you know how to fix that, that would be great. Because I only get this on this render pass, and I haven't figured that out yet. I don't know if it's possible, but on like the normals, you can see the edges are super clean and nice. So for selections, this might not work very well. But anyways, the normals, which is my favorite pass, it is not in, the reason for this pass is not intended for what I use it, but I think it works fantastic for this purpose. And what it does is it gives a color or it gives the same color to the faces that are facing the same direction, right? So all the faces, for example, that are facing upwards are gonna have this green that you see here on the floor, right? And all the faces that are facing down are gonna have the violet, the left, this pinkish, towards the camera, this blue, and so on and so on, right? So the cool thing about that is that, for example, if I wanted to do some nice bounce lighting, I can select, let's say, I can select this bottom face here, right? And select similar. It's gonna select everything that's pretty much similar. Now I'm just gonna concentrate here on this top area so you can see. But once I have the selection, let's say I want to add some nice warm light coming from the ground up, and I'll make a new layer. Let's grab a soft brush. I'm gonna make this really crude, but you'll see the point. Actually gonna select this layer, this color, and make that warm and lighter. There you go. Now, since I have that selection, you're gonna see here that I'm just applying that bounce light onto those faces that are facing down. Right, and I can go throughout the scene here, wherever I want to have that. Right, so now I have that warm light, or that warm color, and that's going to indicate some of that lighting coming up from the floor. I can change the color. I usually make the selection and go to my channels and save that selection because I might use it again later. And so that's why I think Normal's render pass is so powerful. If I were to do some decals or dirt or some texture on the floor, I'll just select the green, and it's only going to apply it to the faces that are facing up, which is the floor or the ground level. You know, the same way for everything else. So that's why I think it's very powerful, and I think it's super useful to have this render pass, because it will help you just have you know, apply lighting and textures a little bit cleaner than other passes. All right, and so the other thing was, and this is again something that I won't be sharing on the next ones, but just might as well show you on this one since I'm going over everything. And I made a just a different file that is gonna have pretty much all my decals and signs and all that stuff, right? So I did this, you know, I spent an hour or two just gathering from the internet and mixing them up and just creating just a bunch of, you know, signs and stuff that I just found. And you know, in my case, they don't really have to make sense for this purpose, but it was just to have something that I could use to just to kind of put around, because I knew there were going to be a lot of signs and some UI stuff, and so I wanted to have a file where I could have everything instead of like for every background I have to go to the internet and fish for them. You know, I wanted to have them all in one place, and you know, I could repeat those, mix them up, and kind of play with letters and that sort of thing. But you're gonna see here that you know, I have a lot of signs that I kind of play with and kind of place them around and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I just have one file with like all my decals and stuff. Right? And I also bought some GUMROAD sci-fi decals and Orban stuff that I use for like the graffiti and some of the decals that are around in the underground and stuff. So I use those as well. All right, and that's about it. So that pretty much covers everything from the 3D to how I use the render passes and the actual process of getting from the render to this. I'm gonna show you now in a little time lapse, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know or putting them in the comment section below, and I'll address them. And but for now, please enjoy this time lapse, and thank you for stopping by. Till the next one.
Don't mean to be rude, maybe you're a loser, maybe you're a fool and losing. I don't mean to be crude, but maybe if you gave a fuck, oh, you'd have better luck. I can't tell, I can't tell, oh, I can't tell, oh, I can't tell. to be rude, but maybe you're a loser. Maybe you're a fool and a loser. I don't mean to be crude, but maybe if you gave a fuck, oh, you'd have better luck. I can't tell. I can't tell. Oh, I can't tell. Oh, I can't tell.
Fuck you, Hudson.
Can you really blame me for needing to see you go? This is too much, I know. This is too much, I know. Can you really blame me for needing to see you go? This is too much, I know. This is too much, I know. This is too much, I know. Can you really blame me for needing to see you go? This is too much, I know. This is too much, I know. Yeah. Can you really blame me for needing to see you go? This is too much, I know. This is too much, I know. Can you really blame me for needing to see you go? This is too much, I know. This is too much, I know.
This is hard for you, and I know it hurts. When someone leaves you, it almost feels like it's too much to handle. But you'll make it in time.
I know you needed someone. It's too late to say that I was there. I know you needed someone. It's too late to say that I was there.
Y'all know see me, cause every single line that I rhyme is causing rappers suicide. You must abide when I arrive, so underground and there's a flood outside. But reaching stars and comet signs, you would say I'm sublime. You know I do it relentless with all the shots that I'm sending. It's like a fire, I'm bending, cartoon avatar out in the ending. Can't calm me down, medicating, atomic bomb detonating. Can't reach as far, educating, I'm the top dominating. I fly high like it's crunch time, with the punchline for you complying. Time drop dimes, living gold mine, assign mine. Don't shine, you rap like it's part-time. I flash, you go blind, make you recede like a hairline. Like I'm ascending, I'm in a different dimension. Thoughts impending, climate signs of sounds that are rending, becoming distended. So stop pretending, I'm reaching heights. You dealing with the flow never ending.
Ain't no love like a real love, but it goes so fast. Oh,